If you're working as a health, fitness, or a wellness professional, it's pretty likely that you're going to run into clients that are dealing with slow motility issues, and it could show up in a lot of different names. They might call it like slow peristalsis, or intestinal dysmotility, or gastroparesis, or delayed gastric emptying, or even lazy bowel syndrome. And all these different names can just depend on where the trouble seems to be showing up and a few other factors. But we're going to just kind of look at what could create this slow motility type issue throughout the digestive tract. And there's a lot of things involved, this enteric nervous system and the vagus nerve, and there's all these like neurons and motor neurons and interneurons and sensory neurons and all these things that feel when that bolus of food is moving through there, that kind of creates a stretching there that kind of signals those things to fire to create that movement of contraction and relaxing moving through the digestive tract. And because this whole process is very complicated, it appears that the medical world views that the solution must be very complicated as well. And we're going to kind of go over some studies here. It's okay if I'm standing in front of these. I'm going to blow them up big when we talk about them, and I'll have links to those studies in the description below if you want to dig into those a little bit more. But in this video, I want to help you understand what we see as the most common underlying causes for this issue and steps you can help these clients take to improve the situation. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So just remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving any medical advice for you to give to your clients, but this can be viewed as an educational video that'll just help your clients gain some insights that might allow them to ask better questions when they are talking to their doctor. But beyond all of these fancy things that we kind of talked about with all the contractions and things that have to happen for things to get moved through, all those things really are taking place, but it appears there are other factors that can signal whether these things are going to happen or not. And one thing that we view as very important is that this bolus of food that moves through this digestive tract appears to move through at a pace according to its acidity level. So if this bolus of food moving through is much too acidic, then it will rush through the system because the body's basically saying, well, it is really acidic. It's going to like burn a hole through my intestinal tract. I don't want that happening. So I'm going to bring all the water I can to cool this off and just rush it through the system, and then it comes shooting out the back door and lifts your client off the toilet like a rocket. So remember that when this food is acidified in the stomach, when it leaves, then that triggers this gallbladder to squirt alkaline bile down to help neutralize those acids, and it also triggers the pancreas to squirt out this bicarb that helps neutralize those acids. So when the acidity from the stomach meets these other substances that are more alkaline, that kind of makes that create a pH of that bolus that would be move through at an appropriate pace. So if this is too alkaline, which would be the opposite situation, now it's going to move through much slower, because here's what happens. Remember, this acidification is the first real step of the digestive system. And I understand that your clients, oh, they're chewing and their saliva, I get all that stuff, but this acidification in the stomach is the first real step. And that's supposed to help us start to break down that food so that we can get the nutrients out of that food. But a lot of your clients, for a wide variety of reasons, are not making enough stomach acid to really acidify their food correctly. So when that's the case, now the food has to break down by process of like rotting and fermenting. And that takes a lot longer than the acidification process. It's also not as efficient. You're not really going to break down all of your food and get all of the nutrients out if it's just rotting and fermenting to break down. So it makes sense that the body would want that to move through slower so that maybe it would have more time to try to access some of the nutrients in that food. It didn't really get broken down properly, so give me a little more time to try to absorb some of the nutrients in this food, give it a little more time to maybe rot a little bit more and break down a little more so that I can get more gumption out of what's being consumed here. So just keep in mind, if you're missing the first step of this process, why would we think that everything else would work according to plan? It's the first step. It's probably one of the more important steps. Anything you do in life, if you miss an important step, it's going to take you a lot longer to do that. If you were going to take a shower without turning on the water, well, the water is that first step of the shower. Would you be like, oh man, I can't get all those shampoo out of my hair. Should I try a different shampoo? Maybe I should try to just brush dirt off instead of, no, you just turn the water on to make the shower more efficient. So we need that first step. Another thing you're going to hear people talking about is, oh, well, it's a hormonal problem that you're having. So let's look at this study here on drugs affecting gastrointestinal motility. And they say the principal local hormones that modulate gut motility are ghrelin, cholecystokinin, or CCK, motilin, glucagon-like peptides, serotonin, and dopamine. But I want to focus a little bit more on the cholecystokinin hormone that's very active here in the duodenum, or the first 10 inches of the small intestine. And on this Science Direct page for cholecystokinin, they say the principal physiological actions of CCK are to stimulate gallbladder contraction, to relax the sphincter of Oddi, and to stimulate secretion of pancreatic juice rich in digestive enzymes. Other functions are stimulation of bicarbonate-rich food secretion, insulin secretion, and intestinal motility. So this cholecystokinin that kind of activates when food moves down here into the duodenum is in charge of signaling the gallbladder to send the bile down. It's in charge of telling this pancreas to squirt out the bicarb and the enzymes, and it's involved in the process of that stuff moving through the intestinal tract. So this is a very important hormone, and when we look at even basic science stuff like this Encyclopedia Britannica website, they say that the secretion of cholecystokinin is stimulated by the introduction of hydrochloric acid, amino acids, or fatty acids into the stomach or the duodenum. So this stuff is supposed to trigger all these things to happen in the digestive process and help things to move through correctly, is triggered by stomach acid. So if someone is not making enough stomach acid, then this bolus coming down here is not going to be acidic enough to trigger that cholecystokinin into action. Now, they said it could also be triggered by amino acids, but remember, we access amino acids by breaking down proteins. Well, we need stomach acid in order to break down protein. And a lot of your clients may not be eating enough dietary fat to trigger any kind of cholecystokinin. And the biggest triggering factor seems to be the stomach acid. So if a client doesn't have enough stomach acid, they're not hitting that first step, and they could be creating these hormonal issues that we hear about. Another thing to think about is we need to look at invaders that can come into this system. If a client has some type of bacterial overgrowth in the stomach or here in the small intestine, like a SIBO issue where bacteria really shouldn't be, then a lot of these types of bacteria, yeast, mold, fungal kind of bad guys, have the ability to put out a waste product that is alkaline. So now they're further alkalizing these environments, making things move even slower. So another problem is that if they're alkalizing this stomach, the client might be making enough stomach acid, but it's getting neutralized by the alkaline waste from this bacterial overgrowth. And what's interesting is that this stomach acid not being there is usually what allows the bad guys to come in the first place. That stomach acid doesn't just help us break down our food, it's the barrier to the whole digestive tract. So these varmints that come in on the food that we're eating should die in an acid bath. So let's look at this study here on dysmotility and PPI use are independent risk factors for small intestinal bacteria and or fungal overgrowth. And they said that the majority of patients, 76% with dysmotility, had SIBO, SIFO, or a mix of both. And they said similarly, 75% of patients on PPI therapy had cultures that were positive for bacterial or fungal organisms. So they were just looking in this study like, what's the cause of SIBO? Is it dysmotility through the digestive tract causing the SIBO, or is it PPI use and turning off the stomach acid that causes the SIBO? And they're like, well, it could be kind of both. But when we understand what's going on, and we understand that a PPI would turn off stomach acid, so that leaves the front door open. Now bad guys have the ability to come in. And if a PPI is turning off stomach acid, well then there's not going to be enough acid here to trigger this cholecystokinin that allows everything else to happen and to move along the way that it should. So if the studies are showing these things lining up, we need to understand that a client doesn't need to be using a PPI to be turning off stomach acid. There's a lot of things, like stress can turn off a client's ability to make stomach acid, so there's a lot of things that could happen that could restrict that acid production. So one more thing I just want to mention is just water traffic. I'm not going to dig too deep into this in this video. I've talked about it in a lot of videos, but a client can have an imbalance at the cellular level called an anabolic imbalance, where the body is just kind of stuck in the nighttime rebuild and repair state most of the time. And in that scenario, that can cause the body to send too much of the water through the kidneys and not enough to the bowels. So when that happens, now the bowels are going to become more hard and dry, and that bolus is going to be more difficult to move. So that can slow things down too. So that's just a factor I want to make sure that you understand. You know, when we're looking at the steps to fix this, the biggest thing are any digestive malfunctions. A lot of clients are going to have a lack of stomach acid. A lot of clients are going to have bile that has become too thick and sticky to flow correctly. So that's not flowing out, and now all of these digestive processes are not working correctly. That can be a big thing to deal with. And we want to look at this reducing any type of overgrowth that's in there as well, because if there's overgrowth creating a more alkaline environment, that's going to slow things down. So these become the most important things, and if you don't know how to fix these things, if you're new to this channel, I'll put a link from my book Health Pro Results, and chapters 3 and 4 of that book kind of walk you through helping clients figure out which aspects of digestion are not working correctly and steps you can help them take to correct those. And that acidification is a very big step. And that book is available on Amazon, but I'll put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free. And if you're a consumer that just happened upon this video because you like the topic, then we'll put a link in the description below for my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts. And chapters 3 and 4 of that book go over the same stuff. That's just more written for consumers, where the Health Pro Results book is really written for health professionals. But you'll be able to get either of those books for free in the description below. Because a client can use like betaine HCl capsules to acidify the stomach. Some people might be able to use apple cider vinegar if they just need a little bit of a boost. That's usually not as effective. And the apple cider vinegar can also magnify this anabolic imbalance water traffic problem. So that might not be good if somebody's dealing with slow motility. But if clients are just going to try to use betaine HCl capsules, you need to understand that with a lot of these issues that can cause this, just putting acid in the stomach could actually magnify a lot of the symptoms that they're dealing with. If there's an overgrowth in there, putting out all this alkaline waste, and you put more acid in there, those opposite pHs colliding in the stomach where that should not happen can create this fizzy mess that'll create a lot of discomfort. So that book can walk you through understanding steps that you might need to take with some of these clients first before they qualify to supplement with that betaine HCl. And that book will also walk you through understanding how to figure out, is a client leaning too far on that anabolic side, and is there maybe a problem of where the body is sending the water, and steps you can help them take to improve that imbalance as well. So you can see there's not really a cut and dry formula that you're just going to use for all your clients to fix slow motility. It's really about looking at the client instead of the symptom that they're dealing with. We need to understand where their body chemistry is and what malfunctions are going on to know where to put that effort to help them really see real results. So I hope that gives you insights on what you need to look at with these clients, and the tools in that book will help you figure out how to do this if you don't understand how to take these steps. But right now, since this overgrowth issue in the stomach can be a really big part of this for a lot of people, you can jump over right now and check out our video on steps to wipe out bad bacteria in your client's stomach. I can't wait to hear about your results.